is a little bit about what is happening in the United States and how our higher education is growing and changing because of the impact that it needs to make on the economy. So Georgetown did a study, and they said by 2020, almost 2/3 of the jobs nationwide will require you to have post-secondary education. Now this study was done probably 5 or 6 years ago. Since that time, with COVID, with the introduction of AI and so many other things, that data point has probably gone higher. If you notice, you'll need to be able to have some degree, associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a doctorate or above. They also pointed out that most of the states in the United States have attainment levels that are far below that. And that means that businesses don't have the skilled workforce in order to be able to grow the economy. Here's the disparity. In the United States, if you have a college degree, you're going to be the orange line. You'll be making far more than someone who's either had some college or none at all. As a matter of fact, the data point is about over your lifetime, you'll make about $1 million more if you have a bachelor's degree. The other thing that we're experiencing in the United States is the 1% or the 0.1% are getting much more wealthy, and called the middle class is tending to struggle now. So there's even more cause or reason for institutions of higher education to step up to help the economy of the United States. This is also an interesting data point. It shows unemployment. If you have less than high school, your unemployment rate is paying more tuition. So, next slide. The blue represents private institutions and how much they charge, and the green represents the public institutions, because as you can see, starting in 2009, 2010, public institutions had to start charging a lot more, which made it more and more difficult for the students who come from the lower socioeconomic classes to be able to even go to college or finish. This is just the slide from public education. So what did New Jersey do? New Jersey has the distinction of being something called a high tuition, high aid state. So our tuition, if I'm right at the waterfront and I can drive across the river and be in New York, where the tuition at public institutions is far cheaper. But it's because there's far more state support. In New Jersey, the state supports in two ways. It says we'll give you an allocation, and they will give something called TAG. So this past year, they increased the amount of TAG funding that a student would receive when they went to an institution. So that meant that more benefit came to a student, so they didn't have to pay as much. And then, following up on what they'd done 2 years ago for the two-year colleges and supporting them and providing students from very modest means a free education, they created this Garden State Guarantee, which will allow students who go to four-year institutions to get 2 years effectively free. What that means for students who come from modest means is that their capacity to be able to finish is going to be much more likely. They will not have to struggle to work. During the pandemic, we found that students were struggling just to make the rent payment at home. They were helping their families out. So there's a lot of struggle. So in some ways, I'm a bit jealous of the countries that have decided that education is a public good, and you've really invested in that. So my hat is off to you for the good work that you're doing, and the United States is getting there, slowly but surely. So in New Jersey, as I said, the TAG funding went up. We were very happy to see that. But let's talk a little bit about education and what does it mean. Higher education in the United States, if you look at the history of it, was based on the German model. It's where the doctoral program came from. And the idea was to provide you with what they call liberal arts degree. You had that liberal arts underpinnings, and then you got the training, whether it's going to be an accountant, fire science, financial technology, but you also took your history courses to help you with that critical thinking. Both of those were important. What the Gallup poll did is said, okay, let's figure out what people who graduated from college, how well they did after they graduated. So they looked at people who had graduated 6 to 10 years out, 30,000 of them, and said, how are you doing? How are you doing in your job? Do you have purpose in what you're doing? Do you have a good social life? Are you doing financially okay? Can you manage your money? Do you have a sense of community? Do you belong to your community? And are you having good health and energy? So the people who, of those 30,000, who actually qualified for all 5 of that were deemed to be what they call thriving. Because a thriving individual is somebody who's going to be able to be the innovators. They're going to be able to help you figure out new ideas. They're entrepreneurs. They're people who help make industry move forward. So they said, okay, we want to know of you thriving people what your college experience was like. And this is what they found. The people who were thriving said, when I was in college, I had a professor who made me excited about learning, whether it was science or math. My background was mathematics, to get excited about some topology. My professor cared about me as a person. My mentor encouraged me to pursue my goals. A mentor may not be a professor. It may be someone on campus who cares deeply for you and wants to make sure that you're doing well, or somebody outside of your school. A project that took a semester to complete. That's common in the United States, that the last year the students might do a project that is complicated. It's a complex problem because that's what their work life is going to be like. An internship that applied classroom learning or an abroad experience. Both of those were very critical. And finally, are you active in extracurricular activities? The percentages to the right are the percentages of students who said, yeah, I had those. But look at the data point at the bottom. Colleges and universities, of those thriving people, only 3% of them had a college experience where all 6 of those things happened. So the idea for us at NJCU was, okay, how can we make sure that when our students come in the door, that their experience is those 6 things? It's going to be important that they know how to be an accountant. It is going to be important that they know how to be a scientist, whatever their discipline is. But we also want to make sure that as a human being, they're doing well, so that when they leave, they can be productive in society. So let's talk a little bit about the study abroad piece, because I want to talk a little bit about the global. As I said, NJCU is a public institution in New Jersey. It was started in 1927 as a normal school where they taught, but they've always provided practical degrees. As an example, in 1970, they created a fire science degree. If you want to become important in the fire science field, you need a bachelor's degree, and it's a good discipline. And some of our alums have gone on to be some of the highest ranking fire science professionals in the country, which is impressive to me. And an example of that is the services they provided, in New York and in New Jersey. The other programs that we have are cybersecurity, security studies. We have programs in the health sciences. We also partner with Joffrey Ballet, so we're very active in the arts, visual arts, performing arts, as well as the media arts. And then we have things like sports management and marketing. So those are the practical degrees, but what we try to do is make sure our students get an opportunity to go abroad and that we have international students coming into our campus. So these are this was a study that was done, and these are the largest. When our students in the United States go abroad, this is what they're studying. It's STEM fields, it's business and management, it's social sciences, foreign languages. Many of them go abroad for a semester, some of them go for 2 weeks. This is NJCU. As you can see, our international students come from everywhere, which is exciting to us. We also have a program. This is one of our many partnerships, but I wanted to highlight this one. It's one that started last year. It's an online doctoral program that we do through our educational technology program, and the employees there are getting their doctorates through our program. So it's a blended program where they'll do some face-to-face, but also some online. We're also a top producer of Fulbrighters. That is a program that sends students abroad. And to give you a context, most of my students have never gotten a passport, because 60% of the students that come to NJCU were immigrants, or their parents were immigrants. So they're just there to go to school. But an international experience changed their lives. And then finally, a project that we're working on here that I'm very excited about is to be part of this change in Egypt. where we're looking at ways where we can partner together to strengthen not only in JCU, but Egypt in terms of some academic programs here. This is something we're working on in the new city, and I'm thrilled to be working with a number of leaders. The person I've got to give credit to is the president of Ocean County College, because he's the one that thought of this years ago, and he has been coming here for years helping to partner. But I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity today and to share.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. I think I have one wrapping up question to close this wonderful panel, which is, what do you think the impact of COVID-19 on education? Is it positive or negative? Please answer in not more than 3 sentences. Dr. Tariq, 3 sentences.
Okay. Well, COVID-19 has been a very stressful time, for sure. It has its pros and cons. It helped us accelerate the development of high-quality digital content, all kinds of platforms, highlighted the importance of teachers in the classroom and social engagement. Also got us all to think about learning and learning how to learn and the importance of that, and the respective roles of parents, students, and the teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. Your Excellency Ahmadi.
In summary, COVID-19, it was a big challenge for the whole world. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they were not able to continue their education, and this is going to be a big loss to the world, and we should have planned to recover from that. But the positive side, it has highlighted the role and the importance of the physical education and the quality of the teachers and the physical presence and the interaction of the student in the classroom, and also enable a lot of nations to fast forward to the future in building their digital capabilities and animation and enhancing the way digital education offered, but also has confirmed that having a teacher, having the classroom, having the interaction is a must, and you have to have a balance between the two. The last thing is COVID-19 has a big impact globally. It's like World War II, and we should work together, all nations together, to recover quickly from this and go back to normal, hopefully in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ashur.
Well, I do believe that it has some advantages and some disadvantages, but the advantages are actually more than the disadvantages. The first one is, as His Excellency Professor Dr. Tariq mentioned, is accelerating our digital transformation in the education and so on. The second one, since we are targeting the knowledge economy and the knowledge approach in our education by programs and all of the things which I mentioned in my presentation, so we are widening by that way the resources for our students to gain more knowledge in their life, and by that way they are upgrading their skills, their level of education, and they can change it from level to level according to the need of the market and so on, by the digital libraries and platforms. The third thing is actually the internationalization. Nowadays we can organize any virtual conferences, lectures. By that way, we are maximizing the use of the internationalization and the cooperation between different institutions and entities in different countries and so on. That another, a lot of advantages. Maybe the disadvantage, in my opinion, is the lack of the direct and the direct connection between the lecturer and student, no physical and direct face-to-face. This is actually.
Thank you, Dr. Ayman. Mr. Zelbor?
I think COVID-19 illustrated two things: tremendous opportunity and tremendous gaps. On the opportunity side, I think we really improved in tools. On the gaps, I don't think everybody had the same access, and that's something that we have to work on.
Thank you. Mr. Dimiano?
I think so. I think short term, it's obviously been incredibly damaging to many people and economies. I read a stat that countries will experience a 1.5% GDP deficit because of the time that the students were out of school. And so short term, we mustn't neglect or forget those students that skipped maybe 2 years, in some cases potentially longer, of their education. Longer term, however, I mean, I've spent 25 years trying to convince educators that online learning is a thing, and it's good quality, and it's effective. And I know many of us have been spending a long time doing that. So this has come to be a little bit of a justification almost. And so we've seen a forced move to remote teaching, and it's opened up people's eyes to the possibility. And that's been wonderful to see. And I think the reason that I think it's going to be particularly valuable is that equity piece. So it levels the playing field. Our CEO talks about the fact that ability is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. So now a student in Aswan has the same capability to learn as a student in Cairo. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
Thank you. Dr. Henderson?
Thank you. Two words come to mind, and one of them is resilient thinking or operating. We missed the human touch when we were all being locked down, and yet in the midst of it, we kept our athletics program going. I had students who were still living in the residence halls. So figuring out what the new normal looked like in terms of continuing those things that are important for human interaction. At the same time, just as you pointed out, this idea that I don't know about online. I don't know about being able to do things virtually. It has really helped us reframe how we think about that. And so it's been exciting to me to see people be much more attentive to how do you live, how do you learn, and how do you teach in an online environment. So anyway.
Thank you. I think Dr. Tarishawi wants to make a comment.
I think 2 days ago there was a big conference organized by UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank on this particular issue on COVID learning poverty symptoms that resulted. I think the biggest problem we face with COVID over now a year and a half and still going is the learning loss. The learning loss, particularly for the young grades, which cannot really learn on their own or use platforms and so on. So there is a learning loss that is not uniform. It starts from KG all the way up. There were discussions about when do we reach a point where that learning loss requires an extra year in pre-university education, which most people would not like. But students are not acquiring the right skills. Some of them reach grade 3 or 4 without being able to read and write. And that cannot be tolerated if we have to do more closures. So I think the biggest risk is the next phase, when the learning loss goes beyond a certain point in pre-university or higher education, that we have to do more drastic measures.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the audience. I would like to thank the organizers, and also I would like to extend my thanks to the esteemed speakers for gracing us, for being here today with us. Thank you very much. This was really informative and educating, and see you soon, inshallah. Thank you.
That was fun. Thank you so much. Look forward to connecting again. Yeah. Yes, it's nice to meet you.
A big thank you to our distinguished speakers.